Is the first thing you do when you get on a video call? Most of us look at ourselves. We want to make sure that our hair is okay and that there's nothing weird going on in the background. Essentially, we want to make a great first impression. And now that many of us are remote, often the only way our colleagues or clients see us is on video. That makes video really, really important. But unfortunately, many people still don't know how to use it to their advantage. Today, you're going to learn the essentials for how to present yourself in the best light, figuratively and literally, to get noticed by your colleagues, clients, and peers by making a strong first impression on camera. Now, before we dive in, I want to share who I am and why I'm here talking about video. My name is Lorraine, and I'm the editorial director at Prezi, a virtual presentation and collaboration solution being used by the majority of the Fortune 1000 to make their meetings better. I frequently get invited to speak about video and virtual presentations, and I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor of the popular course, Virtual and Hybrid Meeting Essentials. I was also an editor at LinkedIn for 6 years, where I worked on its video products, and I had my own video series. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I look forward to meeting you at Prezi's live Q&A. Let's dive in. I think we can all agree that with all of these distractions and things that we have to do in a day, it is really hard to stand out and capture attention. That's why the T method is critical to you making that memorable first impression on camera. What's the first thing you do each morning? For many of us, it will be grabbing a cup of coffee, or let's just say in this case, it's going to be tea. The T method covers the first things you should tackle before jumping onto a video call. And the T method is going to ensure that you appear both confident and competent, and it's going to elevate how the person on the other side of the camera perceives you. But what is this T method exactly? T stands for tech, energy, and aesthetics. Let's start with tech. Tech is probably one of the more overwhelming aspects of our new virtual worlds. We have a lot of new things to think about now compared to before in our offices, where all we had to do was show up in a room and dial in from a central microphone. But I want to make the tech part less overwhelming for you, and so I'm going to share what I view as the basics you need to have an awesome video call. These are personally what I use, and they've worked very well for me, and they don't break the bank, which I think is an important consideration. We'll first cover the hardware you need, which includes a microphone. You'll also need an external camera, and I recommend you get a clicker. And then we'll talk a little bit about software. So let's dive into our mics first. Many people will forgive bad cameras, but they will not forgive bad audio. And I'm sure we've all been on those calls where every third word the person is saying is choppy and cut off, and you just want to hang up right then and there, because if you can't hear them, what's the point of the call? It's so frustrating when that happens. And this is why I recommend buying an external microphone. So here are a few you might want to check out. Fifine, this is the one that I use from Amazon, and there are a few others here recommended by other expert speakers as well that I'd like to share with you. So you have Shure, Neat, and AKG. Now, one benefit to external microphones is that you will have better sound quality because the microphones in our laptops are not very good. Not only that, but on these microphones, you can adjust volume, and there's other toggles as well to ensure that you're getting the best sound based on your voice. And your sound is going to be crisper too using a microphone. Now, there's also another really practical use for it. Needing to click unmute and mute, or even holding down the spacebar on Zoom, it takes some coordination. And the moment you decide that you want to speak, there's going to be that extra lag time as you're moving your mouse over to click. An external microphone is amazing because it is so easy to mute and unmute, literally just with the click of a physical button. It allows a conversation to be more natural, and it gets rid of that lag, and especially for my introverts out there, fellow introverts, this is a game changer when it comes to speaking up. Next, let's talk about our next piece of hardware, our external cameras. External cameras are by far one of the best investments you can make. Similar to the audio, you can spot a trend here. Our laptop webcams are not very good either. They make us look grainy and dark. Now, when I got my Logitech Brio, which is, I think, considered one of the better cameras out there for the price, I instantly felt more confident. I knew I was looking a lot better on camera. I was sharper, crisper, it picked up the lighting a lot better. I just looked a lot more professional, and there was also a bit more customization I could do with software. So I could zoom in on my face, adjust the lighting, and even change the colors. Now, here are a few other cameras that can work really well for you too. So I mentioned the Logitech Brio. You might also want to check out the Nexigo cameras, the Elgato Facecam, or even your phone. And I'll share more about how you can do that in our next section, software. So let's talk about clickers next. A clicker is certainly not a must, but I like to add it here because I do think it can add a lot of value to your video calls when you're giving presentations. Now, ideally, when you're giving presentations, your hands are moving to help emphasize your points. Maybe you're pointing to things and you're showing a lot of enthusiasm. However, when you are using your hands, you lose track of where the buttons are on the keyboard. And anytime you have to click next, you have to look down, find that right arrow key, and break that connection that you have with the audience. So having the clicker in your hand instead of needing to look down and figure out what key to push is going to make you look more professional and confident on camera. And it's just overall going to make a much smoother presentation and viewing experience. There's also that subconscious effect of, I personally think, looking a little bit more authoritative, kind of like the teacher at the front of the classroom using a pointer. Now, again, this isn't necessarily a must, but I would look into this, especially if you're giving presentations fairly often. So I use the Logitech clicker here. It works very well for me, and this is what it looks like. Next, let's dive into our software. There are a few key pieces of software that I'd really recommend that you check out to enhance your tech setup. So Crisp is amazing for blocking out background noise, and it works really well with external microphones. I remember I had some construction going on right next to my window at my old apartment, and I got on a call and I asked, can you hear what's going on outside? And they couldn't. So it definitely blocks out that background noise. Camo, I alluded to this before. Camo allows you to use your phone as a camera. Now, I mentioned the Logitech option before, but this is another one that I'd recommend you take a look at if you want to use your phone. So it's a software. Our phone cameras are super high quality, so definitely check that out if you're not ready to invest in a new webcam. There's also software like Ecamm that gives you additional controls over how your video appears, and I know Ecamm is super great for live streaming. And then, of course, Prezi Video to create more engaging meetings through the content that you put on your screen. And in case you're wondering, I'm using Prezi Video right now. Now, another key thing when it comes to tech is your Wi-Fi. And this is often a culprit of bad audio or video quality. Ideally, you should be hardwired with an Ethernet cord if your home has one, but it's not always possible. So for those with unstable internet, which of course always seems to be the case at the worst moments, right? Check out Speedify, which actually combines all of your available networks into one super network. So that would include your Ethernet, your phone network, and more. And I first heard about Speedify from Ecamm's Doc Rock, who was sharing about how to create a really reliable on-the-go production studio. He's an expert in all of this, so definitely check it out if you have internet troubles. So now that we've covered the tech piece, let's move on to the next part of the T method, and that would be energy. And your energy consists of many different things, not just whether you feel awake and alert for the call. So we'll talk about the importance of your introduction, finding a moment to reset, eye contact, and smiling. So let's start off with your intro. Believe it or not, people make a first impression of you in as little time as a few milliseconds and in as most time as a few seconds. So that is not a lot of time at all. So this first impression is going to be heavily, heavily influenced by your energy. So let me share a few tricks with you that will help. The first is to remember that your mood matters. Even though we're on video, people can sense if we're feeling agitated, tired, or uncomfortable. And in fact, these feelings are probably even more magnified on video because any positive emotions or facial gestures or enthusiasm don't come through as well as they do in person with this barrier of the screen. So we need to put in a little bit of extra work. One way to counteract being seen as having those negative or even just neutral emotions is to think of a good or funny memory before joining a call and just take a minute to do that. So as a group, let's take a second to think of something that made us laugh or smile in the past week. Hopefully we can all think of something. Maybe it was something a friend said or we watched something funny on TV. So let's take a moment to think. All right, were you able to think of one? If not, I have these little guys here to help. Now, when you thought of that memory or you looked at these cute little animals, I hope you smiled a bit more and just felt a little bit lighter. And it's really that kind of energy that we want in your calls and shown on your face to create that strong first impression. Next, you'll want to also think about what you're saying when you're introducing yourself on calls. Starting off a call with questions like, "How are you today? Can you hear me?" Or "Can you see my screen?" are really not the ideal way to start off a call. They're quite generic, they can make you seem unprepared, and they don't help you stand out at all because we hear these questions all the time. How about changing those questions to ones like, "It is so great to see you. It's been a while. I'd love to hear about what you're excited to be working on right now," versus, "How's work been going? Are you busy?" Or how about, "What was the highlight of your weekend?" instead of, "How was your weekend?" How many times have we asked this and the response we always get is, "It was good." Or, "Are you watching any interesting shows? What do you recommend?" Questions like these break up the monotony we usually experience when joining the call, and they awaken the brain out of autopilot. Now, if you can be that person to help turn small talk into interesting conversations, you're just naturally going to connect better by learning more about each other, and then you're instantly going to become more memorable because people actually enjoy the conversation with you. Now, I encourage you all to think about what you want to ask or experiment with on your next video call to kick it off. What resonates with you, either from this list or feel free to come up with your own. Lastly, when it comes to language, let's make sure the language we're using to start off the call is inclusive. Find opportunities to use people's first names and use language like we, our, and us. Humans, we love hearing our names. It makes us feel a sense of belonging and connected with the other person saying it. And of course, it also recaptures attention if someone is zoning out and it brings their focus back into the call. Now, there's also a benefit to using collaborative language. If you feel like you're part of something and part of a group, you're likely going to be more motivated to contribute and bring your best self into the discussion. And there's also research behind this. According to research published in the Harvard Business Review, people who used I statements were typically more junior, whereas the confident leaders, they never felt the need to call attention to themselves and they actually aimed to call attention to the collective group or team. So when it comes to language, the key takeaway here is that by being thoughtful about the words we use and the questions we ask, we really have the opportunity to stand out and make a lasting impression and to show our leadership. Next, you'll want to make sure that you're leaving time for yourself to reset in between calls. And this is also something I've been working on as well lately. And I notice it's a challenge for a lot of people out there. With the move to virtual, we are hopping from meeting to meeting with no breaks. It is back to back without giving us a chance to breathe and context switch. And as a result, we go into meetings more frenzied and agitated, trying to respond to our emails and Slacks quickly before the next call starts. And that's where you would reference before thinking about that positive memory before diving into your call. Now, the solution to help with this is to end your meetings 5 minutes early ahead of the half hour or even 10 minutes ahead of the hour to give yourself this time to refresh and reset yourself, and also to give others a chance as well. Now, one recent step I took is I changed my calendar scheduling link for external calls to 25 minutes instead of 30, and it's been a really huge help. I'm also doing this now for internal meetings, and I know when others do it for meetings that I'm part of, I really appreciate it, and I know others appreciate it too when I do it for meetings that I'm holding. Now, with this 5 minutes, you can look outside the window, give your eyes a break. Quick stretch is a great idea, but just do something that's making sure that you come back to the meeting really refreshed, and also suggest this to your coworkers as well. Now, I really want to emphasize that you're ending at this set time, and I find it helpful to call it out as I get closer to that time with a phrase like, "I know we only have a few minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else you want to cover? Or I'd like to cover, XYZ before we end the call." Next, we'll need to think about eye contact. You should always aim to be looking at the camera or right below it. So in person, we make eye contact to boost oxytocin, which is that social feel good hormone, and we should try to recreate that online too. This can be difficult to do though, because it's human nature to want to look at ourselves. Again, like when we log on, we're looking at ourselves to make sure that we look okay or to see how we look reacting to something. But as best as you can, really fight this urge. And if you're having trouble with it, I recommend turning off self view to help with that. And you'll also notice turning off self view will help you with video fatigue if that's something that you're experiencing. Now, I also see a lot of presentations and even video calls where people are looking kind of sideways at their slides or their content, or sometimes at an entirely different monitor, and that's the worst offender. Because when you do that, it looks like the person is disengaged or distracted. And imagine if I just did the whole presentation, the whole session, just talking over here, you'd be wondering what in the world I was looking at. So, as best as you can, make that eye contact so that the person on the other side or the team on the other side feels like you are looking at them, and that you are connecting with them, and that you are creating that oxytocin boost with them. The next and last tip in the energy section is to smile. When you get ready to make a presentation or get on video to meet someone new, you may experience any one of these super fun emotions as nerves and anxieties build up. Now, when I first started doing presentations and figuring out how to get on calls and do well, I was personally these first two here. Now, imagine I had let those expressions be the main ones in my presentation and I was just talking like this the whole time, or, deer in the headlights, just really scared expression. If that was the case, you probably wouldn't have enjoyed it that much and you probably would have felt a bit uncomfortable. Instead, when we smile, the person or the people on the other side of the camera, they see that we're enjoying ourselves, we're excited about what we're talking about, and it encourages them to feel the same. Our voices also sound more positive and become lighter when we smile. That's why sometimes you hear, even when you're talking on the phone, to smile because people can hear it. You've heard that a smile is contagious, and it's going to apply to virtual presenting and video communications and your meetings as well. A smile is also going to lift your mood and the mood of those around you. Now, when you're nervous, remembering to smile, that's going to take a little bit of extra work. It takes some practice, but once you can master this, it really does make a big difference in how people connect with you. Next, let's move on to the A, aesthetics. Aesthetics are not just about how you look, but also how the world looks around you and how all those things combine to make a first impression. So in this section, we'll cover lighting, your environment, your framing, and your clothing. Let's start off with lighting. Believe it or not, confidence can be greatly impacted by lighting, and lighting is actually very easy to fix, but for whatever reason, it's often an afterthought for many people. So let's see this in action here. Now imagine I gave this whole presentation looking like this. It's distracting, it's unclear, doesn't leave you with the best impression. I don't look very great, and I know when I see myself with bad lighting, I also don't feel good about how I'm appearing. But good lighting is going to make you look more put together, brighter, and more professional. So there's a few ways that you can get more lighting. Maybe you want to try ring lights. So if you're going to get ring lights that are at least 12 inches to 16 inches in diameter so you get enough light. You might want to try a softbox. So that's this one here. And I actually have one right in front of me, right in front of my monitor. Now just make sure whatever light you choose, get one that has different temperature settings because depending on your makeup or the time of day, you're going to need to adjust. Now, for those who are lucky enough to have windows in their workspace, natural light is going to be best, and it's free. So you should ideally have the window in front of you so the light is shining in directly on your face. No matter what light source you choose, though, always remember that it needs to come straight on and never from the back. If it comes from the back, you're going to look like you're in some sort of witness protection program. It's going to be really frustrating for the other side who's trying to read your facial cues and body gestures and body language. So again, light comes from the front because we don't want that witness protection impression to be the one that we leave on our video calls. Next up, let's talk about curating your environment. Having a well thought out, curated environment is going to give a more professional look and feel to your presentation. And similar to lighting, if you look more professional, you're going to be more confident with how you're coming off. And when you come across as more confident, people view you as more competent. So this here, this messy bookcase, probably something we want to avoid. Now, before I moved into this apartment, actually, it was 2 apartments ago now, I was in a studio, and literally the only place that I had room for a small desk was right in front of my bed, right up against it. And I always felt really self conscious about it, wondering if people were paying attention to me when I was talking, were they observing my strange background? And spacing issues like these, they can't always be helped, but if you're in a similar situation, I would recommend buying some sort of room divider, or I had a coworker put up a curtain behind him, for example, and I thought that was a really great hack. So there are tricks like these to at least give the illusion of a proper workspace, even if you can't have your own office at home. When starting off, my recommendation is that simpler is better. So you might want to try a clean background like Jessica. So this usually works best so that you and your content don't get lost and so people don't get distracted by what's going on behind you. But once you get more comfortable with your background, you can start getting creative with it. So for any NPR fans in the audience, you might recognize Guy Raz here. You can see he's outside. He chose this really creative setting. The video looks great, and he's getting all that natural light that I mentioned earlier is the ideal type of light. Or one of my favorite examples is by body language expert Ted. She only had two plants behind her, but she had all of this beautiful natural light. The colors of the plants really popped against the white. So I thought it was just such a beautiful setup. She also looks very professional and she was also personable at the same time, which I think, at least for me, is the ideal combination when being on calls. Now, fun fact, or maybe it's just fun for me, but I actually used to call this section curating your background. But I think with all of the advances that we're seeing in tech and how people are up-leveling their video calls, curating your environment is actually a more accurate description of what someone needs to do to really stand out and impress. Now, at Prezi, we're seeing a lot of companies and customers creating a true virtual experience on their video that helps contribute to their overall presence and professionalism. So we have a great background here, but here's an example showing how you can have both a great background and your video environment becomes even more impressive once you add on-screen visuals like a simple name tag. So this is an example of truly curating the whole virtual and physical environment on camera to create the strongest impression possible. Now this is extremely valuable real estate, and we need to make sure that we are making the most of it to be really noticed. Next, let's talk about framing. So this is what I often see when people are on video. With this angle, I get to see up your nose, underneath your chin, and kudos, it's great to see your face, great that you're turning on the camera, but this is a bit too close and frankly is actually probably uncomfortable to the other side, and it's really interesting. There's a scientific reason for this. People skills expert Vanessa Van Edwards says that this is because this feeling of being too close on camera replicates what we might feel in person when someone gets in our personal space. Our brain's reaction is to think that this person could possibly harm us, and it activates our amygdala, which processes fear. And that is not a feeling that we want to be giving others on a call. Now, being this close is also an issue because it makes it harder for the other side to stay engaged when all they're seeing is just this floating head with no movement or space to give their eyes a break, like we have in normal in person interactions where we might glance off at a coworker or maybe look down at our notes. This is a lot to look at for a call. So your video should ideally show your shoulders and a little bit of your torso with a little bit of space above your head. So I like to say about 3 fingers worth. So removing the visuals here would be about three fingers to the top of the screen. Now, when you do this, you're no longer just a floating head, and the person on the other side of the camera actually feels like you're more having an in-person conversation with them when they can see your body movement and hand gestures, and again, not just your head. Now let's actually all do a quick group activity to check whether we have the right distance from the camera. So if you stick out your arm, you're going to want about an arm's length of distance from your camera. If it's any closer, push that camera back, raise it up, use things that you find around the house, a laptop stand, you can use delivery boxes, just anything you find, books, to make sure, again, you want that good distance, and then you also want that right height so that you're getting this part of your body on camera. Now, we are now moving into the last part of the T method, which is our clothing. At quick glance, all these outfits look more or less okay, but we'll want to avoid these first two. Why? The white in this first image blends into the background. This person does not stand out. Now, for the person with the stripes, stripes often move on camera. It's the strangest thing. Same with other patterns. So, if you ever decide to wear a pattern outfit, make sure to do a test run on video before jumping on an important call to make sure that your clothes work well on camera. But in general, I would stay away from patterns. One other thing to keep in mind is to avoid wearing colors that match too closely with your skin tone because it'll look like you're not wearing anything. Now, the two people on the bottom here, they have it right. Aim for jewel tones to help you pop against your walls and stand out. So those would be colors like emerald, ruby, maybe magenta. So take a look at your wardrobe, decide what you want to keep, what you want to remove. And again, it's all about making that strong first impression on camera to get remembered and to be noticed. Now, believe it or not, we have covered the whole T method. So let's do a recap to help everything stick. For your tech, you'll want to ensure that you have the necessary hardware with a microphone, external webcam, and a clicker. You'll also want the right software to enhance the tech that you do have. For energy, you'll want to focus on your intro, resetting yourself between calls, eye contact, and smiling. And for aesthetics, you'll want to work on your lighting, curating your environment, proper camera framing, and your clothing. Congratulations, you are now equipped with the knowledge and skills to make amazing first impressions on video. I can't wait to see you all on August 18th to answer all your burning questions about how to make a memorable and professional first impression on video. In the meantime, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and don't forget that you can start adding your questions ahead of the live Q&A using this QR code here, or you can visit slido.com and use the code TMethod. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today, and I will see you on August 18th.